Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Mostly Python. Today we're going to be working on a cool Python program. We're going to be making a Python number guessing game. This is actually one of the first Python programs I made back when my father was teaching me Python in grade 6. And it's cool because you get to learn, teaches you about a lot of good Python concepts, and you also come with a cool game that you could show your friends and that you could play. So it's all win. So let's get started. So first we're going to start, we're going to say import random. What we're doing over here is we're importing the random module. The Python random module is a module that helps you pick random numbers. So this is what we're going to be using to pick a random number that the user is going to guess. So we're going to say number equals random dot random 0 comma 30. So what we're saying over here, we're saying variable numbers equals to random, which stands for random integer, which is a random number from 0 to 30. Now we're going to define another variable here. We're going to say guessed underscore correct equals false. So this variable is basically saying that the person has not guessed correctly yet, and when the user guesses the number correctly, we're going to change that to true. So the reason we need guessed correct equals false is because for the actual brains of the program, we're using a while loop. Now a while loop basically lets you put a term in there, and as long as that's true, it'll run. So for example, you could say while 4 plus 1 equals 5, and then you could put, print hi, and then as long as 4 plus 1 is equals 5, it'll run through the code that you put in here. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to say while guessed underscore correct equals false, which means as long as the person hasn't correctly guessed the number, we're going to say guess equals integer input guess a number from 1 to 30. So what we're saying over here is we're saying as long as the user has not correctly guessed the random number we picked, we're going to ask them to guess a random number from 1 to 30, which is going to be saved as an integer to the variable guess. Now we're going to say if guess doesn't equals number, meaning let's say the random number is 7 and the person guessed 3. So we're going to put two things in here. We're going to say if guess is greater than number, meaning let's say the random number was 3 and the person guessed 5. So if the person's guess is greater than the random number that we picked, we're going to say print too high. Now we're going to say over here, we're going to say elif, which is a hybrid of else and if, guess is lower than number, meaning let's say the random number was 7 and the person guessed 2, we're going to say print too low. So this is what we have for if the person's guess is different than the number. However, we're going to say elif guess equals number, meaning if the person guesses correctly what the random number is, we're going to say print you've guessed correct, and then we're going to say guessed correct equals true. So just a quick overview of what we've done so far. We import the random module, pick a random number from 1 to 30. We say guessed correct equals false. We say while guessed correct equals false, while the person didn't guess. We ask them to put in a number. If the person does not guess a number, we say if their guess is higher than the number, we tell them they're too high. We say if their guess is lower than the number, we say they're too low. And then we go back over here and we say if their guess is equals to number, we say you've guessed correct. And then and then we say guessed correct equals true, which would end this while loop because guessed correct would no longer be equal to false, it would be equal to true. And if the person if the user still did not guess a number, it'll go back to the top of the while loop and it'll run until they guess the number correctly, and guessed correct is true. So let's run this code to see if it works. So guess the number from 1 to 30, let's try 15. Too high, so let's try 7. Too low, let's try 11. Too low, let's try 13. Too high, let's try 12. There we have it. You've guessed correct, and the program exits. So, code seems to be working, but we still have an error, because you can see, as long as we type a number, we could type whatever number we want, program's good. But if we type a word, we get this error, value error, invalid literal for integer with base 10 pass. What this error is basically telling us is, if you remember over here, we said guess equals integer input. So this input statement is expecting an integer, which is a number. An integer is basically only a number, as opposed to, just to keep it basic, as opposed to a string, which a string is any random collection of letters or numbers. But an integer is specifically a number, so you could do stuff like math with it, like mathematical functions. So when we pass a letter, when it asks us for input and we type in letters instead of a number, we've got a value error, because Python can't save letters to an integer, it can only save numbers. So what we're going to do over here to deal with that potential error, we're going to say try colon, and we're going to go over here and indent guess. We're going to say guess equals integer input, and we're going to say except value error, which is the error that we got when we typed in a letter instead of a number. We're going to say except value error, print that isn't a number, and then we're going to say break. What break does is it's going to end this while loop. So there's two ways of ending a while loop. You could either have, for example, like we have that, it says while guessed correct equals false, it runs, but then if we change the variable guessed correct to true, then it's going to stop running. Or you could just use break, which just totally ends the while loop. So every time we're going to say try guess equals integer, and if we get a value error, which means that the person didn't type in a number, we're going to say that is a number and break the program, break the loop. So now let's run that. Guess the number from 1 to 30, 44. Too high, let's say we do mostly. That isn't a number, and the program exits. So there you have it, guys. That is our Python number guessing game. This program, we've made a cool working game. We've also learned about the Python random module, about while loops, about try and accept statements to accept Python errors instead of just having your code stop running. We've learned about if and if statements, greater than, less than, equal to, or not equal to. So it's pretty cool. We've made a cool program and we've learned a lot of stuff. So overall, it's a win-win. Anyway, till next time, till the next video, be Vikash.